So to honor Lucy Davidovich's memory, her being a member and part of our Orzarua community, and for our commitment to learning and growing our community through participating in these wonderful lecture series, Dr. Rendsburg, it's a delight to welcome you back for this third of 3 lectures in this special series. Dr. Rendsburg.
Thank you, Rabbi Bolton. I need to be approved for screen sharing.
I'm going to make you a co-host now.
Right. Excellent. There we go. Okay, excellent. And I hope everybody can see the opening image here of the Kennecott Bible, the greatest Bible ever written. And you'll understand as we proceed why I say that, why I call it that. But again, just to acknowledge the great Lucy Davidovich, Rabbi Bolton just used the word research. She was the optimal researcher. I mean, this was what she did. It's wonderful to commemorate her memory in this fashion. And as I said, an honor to have my name associated with her as one of the giants of 20th century scholarship in the field of Jewish studies, Holocaust especially. So as we heard in the introduction in our series, The People of the Book, 2 weeks ago, we were in Canaan looking at early Israelite writing and some Dead Sea Scrolls. And then we went to Cairo last week and looked at the Cairo Geniza. And today we go to La Coruña in the far northwest corner of Spain, of the Iberian Peninsula. I'm sure that everybody knew where Canaan and Cairo were, but most people have not heard of La Coruña. And you will learn today of its most important feature, which is the place where the Kennecott Bible was created. I will explain why it's called the Kennecott Bible towards the end. I'll show you La Coruña on the map towards the end, but for now, let's just begin with the basics. It was written in this city in Spain in 1476. It is comprised of 453 folios. Now, when we have a printed book today, we count pages. So a single page of a book has a front and a back, and we count each of those individually. So with medieval manuscripts, we don't do that. We count them as folios, a particular leaf of the book. And each folio has a recto and a verso. So our 453 folio manuscript is the equivalent to a 900 plus page book, to give you a sense of the size of the Kennecott Bible, which is the complete Bible from Genesis through the end. It's now in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. It's been there for the last 250 years, and I'll explain that journey as well. If I were at home with my complete library behind me, I would hold up a printed Bible, a complete Bible printed. And again, to say what I've said in the past 2 weeks, the printed book is an artifact of modernity. In fact, if you look at the date here, 1476, by the 1450s, printing had been invented by Johannes Gutenberg in Mainz, Germany, and printing spread to Italy very quickly, including Hebrew printing, as the printers in northern Italy, in Venice, and in other cities created Hebrew font for movable type as well. So this is at that transition period. All because we now have printed books, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden manuscripts go by the wayside. They will eventually. It'll take a century or so. There's an overlap. And so in Spain, and we don't think there was a printing press in Spain yet by 1476 in Hebrew, that would take another couple of decades. You have talented scribes and artists continuing to create manuscripts. This is the crown jewel of all medieval Hebrew manuscripts, a tradition that goes back to the 8th, 9th, 10th centuries with the creation of what we call the Codex, which is the forerunner of the printed book, except it's you can turn pages and so on, but it's again handwritten. Okay, now this is the opening page of Genesis that you see here. Notice at the bottom I say folio 9v, that is to say verso. But actually, before you get there, if you were to open up this quote unquote book, this codex, it actually starts with the Sefer Michlol of David Kimchi. This is a grammatical treatise, and you're looking at 1V on the right and 2R on the left. And I'll show you why I'm able to get the images as well in a few towards the end. So the idea here was, before we get to the biblical text, the scribe who created the Kennegat Bible understood you needed to know biblical Hebrew grammar in advance of reading the Bible. This is not unique to the Kennegat Bible. There are other Bible manuscripts that begin with the grammatical treatise. And in fact, this by David Kimchi is the most famous and most comprehensive of all the medieval Hebrew grammarians, actually written in Narbonne, about 2 hours west of where I am right now, here in the south of France. And there's more of it here, and you can just see the beautiful art decorations, and we'll return to some of the art issues as well. Here you have the beginning of Genesis, and notice the large letter bet at the beginning right here, what we call a drop letter. The Jews did not invent this. If you look at a medieval Latin manuscript, or in some of the other language traditions as well, you'll see the large letter at the beginning. I think you can all picture this. You've seen enough of these things. And Jewish scribes began to imitate that with the bet of Bereshit, taking up 3 lines that you see here. And notice the artwork around the margins as well. This is the book, which is to say codex, looking, opened up. So you can get a sense of its size, and we'll come back to this image later on. Now, what makes this codex so unique? What makes it the greatest Bible ever written? Every parasha, now we're only talking about the Torah, the beginning portion of this, every parasha is introduced with a piece of artwork, and the artwork there may or may not have any connection to the content of that particular week's Torah reading. Now, each one is introduced with this artwork. This is the beginning of Parshat Noach. You see it over here if you read Hebrew, Ela Toldot Noach. And it says Pei Resh and then a portion of a shin. This is how you abbreviate the word parasha. And right here, under the Resh is a bet with a dot over it. And the scribe or the illuminator kept track of the numbers of each parasha. This is the second parasha of the Torah. I think you all know that. And so he put a bet to tell you that this is number 2. Now, in this case, it looks like the artwork, which seems to be a pair of animals, is of course related to the content of the story of Noah. You move forward. This is Parashah Daled. Right here, you see the little Daled tucked in under the open space of the Resh. Right, this is Parashat Vayera. But this mystical, mythical creature has, of course, nothing to do with the story of Abraham. It's just the artist having fun, indicating the beginning of this parasha. And you're going to hear me say this over and over again. Do you have one of these in your Chumash? Does your Eitz Chaim volume in your pew look like this? And of course, the answer is no. I continually say with a smile, but I just want to show you the imaginative artwork that goes into the making of this Bible. Or how about this one, the beginning of Parshat Chayei Sarah, the 5th parasha of the Torah, and you have this bird with a crown, which has nothing to do with the story of Sarah's death and the purchase of a burial place and so on and so forth. These are the stories that you have in the procurement of a bride for Rebecca. These are the stories that occur in those chapters in Genesis. Or here, Parashat Toldot, just beautiful artwork to decorate the pages. And again, you see the Pei Rei Shin on each one of these pieces of art. Another one of these birds, love this one in the beginning of Parshat Vayetze. Now, when you get to Parshat Miketz, you have something a little different. You have this dog coming out of this geometric shape here. And in this case, the letters Pei and Resh only. But look how Pei and Resh are created. They are made up of zoomorphic and anthropomorphic figures of various humans and animals to create the Pei and the Resh. I absolutely love the way the artist can do this, and he mixes it up. He doesn't have to follow this all the time or this, right? he can do whatever he wants. And in this case, he indicates the beginning of Parashat Miketz in the middle of the story of Joseph with the pay and the resh you see here. Now, what you don't have here, and of course there are no dogs mentioned in that story. What you don't have here is an indication as to what number parasha this is within the series of parashot that go through the entire Torah. My theory is that the dog looks like a letter Yod, and this is, whose numerical value is 10, and this is the 10th parasha in the annual reading cycle of the Torah. So I think the dog is supposed to evoke the letter Yod equals number 10. We don't have to have a small Yod written elsewhere. Now, the problem with my theory, by the way, is that there are other places where a parasha number is not given, and there's no indication. But in this case, I think I'm onto something here, but I'm still waiting to go through and look at every single one of these. I've done it a first blush, but I need to go through more seriously and study every one of these parasha markers. End of the book of Genesis, and you see, again, some very lovely artwork. When we go to the book of Exodus, and this was the reading yesterday in synagogue, Parashat Bishalach, so this is very timely as we present the Kennecott Bible. This is the beginning of the parasha right here. I'll show it to you up close in just a moment. But notice what the scribe has done, or the illuminator has done. Notice the two walls that you have there as the story of Exodus 14 unfolds, as the Israelites pass through the Sea of Reeds with the waters like a wall on their left and like a wall on their right. And you get the visual imprinting here as you read this manuscript, Exodus chapter 14. I hope you're all amazed. I want to see gobsmacked faces everywhere as I show you what our scribe and artist, and they were two separate people, as I will demonstrate in a little bit. Here is the beginning of the parasha, so I put the box around the spot there on the right, and I've blown it up here for you on the left, and you can see Pei Rei Shin, and again, this is now the 16th parasha in the weekly reading cycle, Bishalach. When you get to the poem, Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea, it is written out in traditional fashion, as you see here, beautifully laid out by our scribe. And then when you look at the very last line, look what happens here. You have the word Hayam, the sea, over here, and Hayam, the sea, over here, with white space in between. And it says here, Uvnei Yisrael hachu bayabasha batoch, and the children of Israel walked through on dry land in the midst of. And what you get here is a visual imprinting, and there I've put it up for you at the top in English, a visual imprinting of the Israelites going through the sea with the Yam on both sides of them, the sea, and the Israelites walking through in dry land. This, by the way, is not unique to the Kennecott Bible, and many Sifrei Torah, including the ones in your synagogue, probably have something like this. But it's just another indication of how the scribe has laid out everything. Every possible part of the biblical text is thought out in the creation of this Bible. When you get to Parashat Kitisa later on in Exodus, you have this animal here and this huge crown thing above him, or fortress thing above him. And what is that? This is the coat of arms of the Kingdom of Castile. And at this point, La Coruña had been incorporated into the Kingdom of Castile. And so our artist pays homage in some way to the ruling authorities. And you see the similarity between the artwork on the right and the official coat of arms of the kingdom on the left. Mind you, we have to say this explicitly, but you may already have thought of this. This Bible was produced in 1476, only 16 years before the expulsion of the Jews from Spain by the edict of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella in 1492. And this is the Jewish community in a relatively small, out-of-the-way place that has the ability to create a manuscript such as this. Sometimes what's going on here. No, it's not the question of the artist didn't complete the work. I just wanted to show you this. This is 74 recto. If you turn it over, here's 74 verso. This is the beginning of Parshat Bechukotai. And what's happened here in the previous one is that the colors just bled through the parchment because of the very richness of the hues. And here you have this artwork, just to show it to you again. And here it says Parashah. This is the 33rd one of the annual reading cycle. We're now into the book of Numbers. What's with these animals? In this case, we're at the end of the book of Leviticus. In this case, it is thematically related to what we're reading, because look at the verse in Leviticus 26:22. These are the admonitions, the tochacha, at the end of the book of Leviticus, where God says, if you do not observe the covenant, I will send the beasts of the field against you. And so the artist takes advantage of that passage and puts in a bear and what is that, a wolf or something that you see here at the bottom of this page. Absolutely fascinating. But then, of course, he goes back into the book of Numbers and starts writing more, drawing more fantastical creatures. Nothing in this parasha, Shlach Lecha, Numbers chapter 13, the story of the spies, nothing that has to do with anything that you see in this fantastical creature. Or this, the beginning of Parshat Korach, maybe somehow showing the vanity of Korach, I don't know. But in any case, this is what we get in the artwork now. When you get to the law of the so-called red heifer, okay, that's a good place to draw something that we can all recognize. And you see the artist has done that here at the beginning of Parashat Chukat. Bilam, Parashat Balak, Bilam, or the prophet Balaam, the non-Israelite prophet who's brought by the king of Moab to curse the Israelites, in medieval conceptions was seen as a diviner. And here the artist takes advantage of the way people understood him, and he's holding an astrolabe in his hand. These are the wonders of medieval art. I mean, and look, of course, the prophet Balaam here is looking awfully medieval, as you can see, by his dress and by his shoes and by his hat. And obviously the astrolabe, an invention of the Middle Ages. I absolutely love this portrayal. Doesn't take you back to ancient Israel, but certainly shows you what medieval Iberia was like. Traditionally, the Shema prayer is written with a large ayin at the end of the word Shema and a large dalet at the end of the word Echad. The scribe has done that for us here, and this is real gold. And he is, in the illuminator, has bracketed the entire first paragraph of the Shema with the gold. This is real gold foil that you see here included in the manuscript. And then we come to the end of the Torah with artwork here, more artwork on the next page. Again, bleeding through, you see the menorah. Turn the page and you actually now see the menorah. And on folio 121R on the left, you have apparently the artist's attempt to show you the tabernacle and its accoutrements. It looks like an ark, presumably there with the cherubim above it. And I see other elements of the ritual cult, the shofar, the shofarot, the two incense pans, these long shovel things, and various other vessels, probably having to do with the tabernacle. So again, just absolutely wonderful art as the Torah comes to its end. That, of course, is only not even a third of the way through the biblical text, maybe a fourth of the way through. And you get all these other biblical books still following. This is the bridge between the end of the book of Judges and the beginning of the book of Samuel, just to show you how what the artist does here, working in tandem with the scribe, who obviously left space to allow for the artist to create what he did in the artwork, creating a frame around the end of Judges and the beginning of Samuel. When we get to the beginning of the book of Kings, we have the elderly King David portrayed here, because that's exactly where 1 Kings chapter 1 opens up. Let's have a close-up look at this. Absolutely wonderful. David is now advanced in years. The text actually begins that way. V'hamelech David zakein ba bayamim. The artist portrays the elderly David on the throne. Once again, this doesn't tell us anything about the way David looked in biblical times, which would have been 3,500 years. No, sorry, my mistake. About 2,500 years before our text was created. But it does show us something about medieval Spain. The question is, how would an artist living in remote La Coruña, and again, I'll show you the map soon, how would he ever know what a king looked like? It's not like he ever made his way to the royal palace. Possibly the king once in a lifetime might have visited this outpost of Iberian culture, but the odds are that our scribe and our illuminator never saw a king, a Spanish king. How did he know what a king looked like? You can hear me building up already, right? Spanish playing cards, okay? You have playing cards, so you know what a king looks like. Look at the robe, look at the parting of the robe, compare that to the way David is shown there on the left. I'm not sure what this is. I mean, it looks like a club. David is holding something very similar to it here. You just have the similarities of artwork on playing cards, which anybody could have had, and therefore our scribe and our illuminator know what a king looks like. There you have it. This, by the way, is my own photo. Every photo I've shown you up until now, I have taken from the Bodleian Library website, but here and a few others I will show you are my own, and this is the start of the Book of Kings. And every camera and every lighting is going to be slightly different. So this one looks like this, and professionally done. This one looks like this, taken with my camera. Okay, and we keep going onward through the Bible. If we were all together, I would say to you, if in a room, if we were all together, I would say to you, okay, this is the audience participation portion of our program. Which biblical book is this? And the answer is, I'm sure you all would say, this is the beginning of the book of Jonah. And of course it is. Where else do you have a ship so prominently portrayed? And where else is a human being swallowed by the big fish? And I love these Spanish mariners. They're just having their conversation on the ship. And again, this looks like a 15th century Spanish ship. And think of Columbus's 3 ships, actually, right? They give you a sense of the same time period. And our fish is eating poor Jonah right there. And how's this for a close-up of the artwork? You gotta love this, folks. I mean, this is just so creative and so wonderfully done by our brilliant artist. There's the opening of the book of Jonah. Now, when you get to the book of Psalms, sort of like the Torah, where you had every single parashah introduced with some artwork, the artist has done the same here in the book of Psalms. Every one of the 150 Psalms is introduced with a piece of art and the number of that Psalm. So you can see on the right-hand page there, Aleph through Hey, I hope you can see that. And on the left-hand page, Vav, Zayin, Chet, and Tet, Psalms 1 through 9. Absolutely beautifully done. Another example of the same, Psalms 85 through 89. And then when you get to Psalm 90, however, you get this. That's the full page there on the left. Unlike all these other Psalms, which have little bits of artwork to introduce them, Psalm 90 has got a huge amount of artwork all around the poem. And this is the only psalm in the Bible which is attributed to Moses. It begins Tefillah LeMoshe, the prayer of Moses. Many of the others start out something like Tehillah LeDavid, a psalm of David, or Mizmor LeDavid, a psalm of David, and so on. This is the only one attributed to Moses by the tradition. And so our scribe has left space and has asked our illuminator to highlight this in the fashion that you see here. But it's not just because this is the one attributed to Moses. As you'll see, there's another reason why this was done for Psalm 90. Okay, I'm going to stop the share for a moment. And as I said, as we've done in the last 2 weeks, invite any questions that anybody has already at this stage about what I'm showing you, and whatever comes to mind that you may want to share or ask a question of.
Dr. Rendsburg, I'll take that opportunity to say that it seems to me, and this is just amazing, and the jaw is dropping as we knew this art existed, but really have not looked inside, and just a love of our community. A nod to Bobby Kohler and the gallery committee, who's got the illuminated manuscripts of Barbara Wolf on our Orzarua gallery walls, and they are just incredible. She's done Haggadah, she's done Psalms, she's done Shir Shirin as of late, both textual and artistic. You've made a distinction between scribe and artist. That's number one. So I'll just comment and let you comment more about that. And number two, it seems like the artist really was biblically literate, even if there were fantastical creatures. Is it possible there were two artists? One was more Jewishly literate, one was less. And what do we know about the artist, him or herself?
We have the name of the scribe and the name of the artist, and I'll show you at the end of the volume. They have both given us their names, and we have to assume it's a single artist who did all of this. Yeah. Who was, as you said, biblically literate. I mean, it's possible that the scribe, who was obviously a master scribe and knew the entire Tanakh, he might have said, draw a red cow here or something like that. But our scribe is clearly very much biblically literate as well. I agree with you. But yes, a single scribe, single artist, rather.
Can I ask, I'm wondering, you said that you think it's a local artist. It could be during those times they were kind of itinerant in terms of the artist, and you can see influence from other areas. So do we have other examples of work by the same artist? And how do you know that it was really a local artist?
Great question, Bobby. And did I hear Rabbi Bolton correctly? You're the one who's taking care of the gallery?
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks. I'll look forward to seeing it one day, hopefully. I will tell you about the history of the book and why we know it was done in La Coruña. We know of other work by the scribe, as I'll show you. I don't know if we know other work by the illuminator. You've asked a good question, and I can research that at the online database of the National Library of Israel, database of Hebrew manuscripts. But we know for sure that he's in La Coruña, and I'll explain how and who and why and so on towards the end. Yeah.
Just before I leave, is there any Kabbalistic influence into his illustrations?
Oh, this is a wonderful question. When you think about the fact that the Zohar was created in northern Spain by Moses de Leon, and Rabbi Bolton, give me a quick date on the Zohar. Is it 13th or 14th century? I'm trying to remember myself now. 13th, I think. 13th
century, with strata coming that Professor Dunn really found even earlier in the 11th.
Yeah. So another great avenue of inquiry, Bobby. So thanks for that question. I don't deal with Kabbalah, so I don't know the answer to that. But of course, when you get into fantastical creatures, what I can do, of course, is ask the current master of the Zohar, which is Danny Matt of Berkeley. So great question again. Good.
Well, fantastical creatures were all over Europe. That was very much, it was almost allied with science, but there's something about the lines that extend beyond and that have a very free curlicue form that I think is kind of interesting and maybe Kabbalistic.
Yeah, I'll say the following. A person could spend, I'm not exaggerating, a lifetime studying any medieval manuscript. And we have tens of thousands of medieval Hebrew manuscripts sitting in libraries around the world. And there are people who do spend or write their doctoral dissertation spending 5 to 10 years on a single manuscript, investigating all the lines that you're talking about. So, I've been studying this manuscript for, 10, 15 years, let's say. And I'm always, every time I look at it, find something new. But of course, I'm always working in other fields as well. So I just wanted to say that it's, the pursuit of knowledge on any one of these things, and you're all asking great questions, which could be tracked down, not by me, although I will do it because I now I'm curious myself, but by some future doctoral student. And that includes all of you. No one's ever too old to go in for a PhD.
We had some other questions. So Jay, you ask first.
Thank you. Hi, Professor. This is wonderful. I have a question. On many of the folios, there are lines in very small handwriting above or below the text. And in Beshalach, next to Shirat Hayam, it seems sideways. There was an awful lot of text. What is that about?
Those are the Masoretic notes. I didn't want to go in too deeply into what they are. The Masoretes, who created the vowel points and the accent marks, which are in every printed Bible, also created notes around the margins at the top and the bottom of the page. In the case of Shirat Hayam, because of the formatting, they had to place it in other places on that page, on that folio. But those are notes which tell us about rare words that are on that page and where else in the Bible those rare words occur. So that's all part of the Masoretica, as we call it. And every medieval manuscript, every Masoretic medieval manuscript has that. You would find this in the famous Aleppo Codex, in the famous Leningrad Codex, and every codex would have that. But what makes this Bible so unique, of course, is its artwork as well. But those are Masoretic notes.
Let me curate questions here, Hal. Go ahead, Hal.
Yeah, I was saying I love seeing the juxtaposition of the artwork with the text. And my question is, how come that composition did not take further root more in a more widespread manner in other countries, other centuries?
Again, hold off on that. Towards the end, I'm going to show you a little bit more. It really took off in the creation of Haggadot for Passover. But part of the answer, I think, is also the cost. We're going to answer all these questions. I mean, think about the amount of time and the cost of and the labor of creating this masterpiece. So it's a lot easier to write out the biblical text without all the artwork. I think that's what you're asking, right? So yeah. Hopefully I'm answering your question.
And final for this round, Zella.
The interlacing that goes around a lot of the lines of text is also evident in Celtic designs. And I'm wondering, are they sharing design elements? I mean, this is clearly not Northern Europe, where you see a lot of that interlacing. So they borrow freely from one another, or is there, one master that they're all kind of copying from, the ideas, the design elements?
Okay, so I am not an art historian. I work with the words. I'm a language and literature person. I'm just pretending to be an art historian today. And you've just raised a question which is fascinating for the following reason. And I'm only aware of the Celtic cross. I don't know much more than the Celtic cross. The kind of thing you're talking about, I'd like to learn more about. So if you could perhaps email me later and send me some place to go to explore further. But I will say this. How many of you know that Iberia was actually also part of the Celtic world? In fact, all of Western Europe was. When the Romans reached France, and it was called Gaul, and when they reached Iberia, these were all Celtic lands before the Romance languages spread out of Latin into this region. And in fact, the northwest corner of Spain, where La Coruña is located, is a region called Galicia. It is not the famous Galicia that more people know about in southern Poland. That region of Spain is called Galicia to this day. And it has a very unique Spanish dialect that only those people themselves can understand. Actually, one of my students, believe it or not, her grandparents come from there. Her Spanish is fluent, but she can barely speak to her grandparents. I mean, the grandparents can shift and speak standard Spanish. But and that area is still, I believe, filled with Celtic influence. So thanks for pointing that out. Let's get back to our presentation. Thanks everybody for the great questions. And again, we'll have plenty of time at the end for more.
Great.
So the biblical text ends, and then you have more of the grammatical treatise of David Kimchi, which you see here. So it's at the beginning and at the end. It's sort of the envelope for the entire Bible, because again, you have to have biblical Hebrew knowledge to be able to read and understand the Bible. Look at the window frames, for lack of a better term. Look at the way that the artist and scribe have worked together here to create these, what I call window frames for the biblical text. Where do they come from? Where does one get this idea? The Jews lived in a world beyond the biblical text. They lived in a real world with real architecture. This is the synagogue in Toledo. I assume many of you have been there. Look at the windows, or some of you have been there. Look at the windows in the bell tower up here. Look at the design. You can actually see a little one right here. Let's go inside the synagogue. Look at this. This is the niche for the ark. This is the ark. It's no longer a functioning synagogue. I mean, it hasn't been since 1492. But look, it's been returned to the Jewish community, though. Look at the art here, the architecture. Look at these windows up top. In other words, and these. This is, and by the way, of course, Jews didn't create that. Where did they get the idea? They got it from the Spanish Christians, who of course didn't really create it either. They got it from Spanish Muslims. But this is a place where all three religious traditions live together, and you could see the architecture in buildings, including the royal palace in Sevilla. This, by the way, is still the royal palace. When the royal family travels to the south of Spain, they stay here. Look at the windows. Or here in Portugal, look at the arcade. And so you go back to your biblical text, and this is what they're creating. This is how they're showing, this is how they're illuminating the manuscript. Page after page looking like this. Now, on this particular page, I want to now direct you to the top of the page to show you some fun stuff. This is a picture. It's the text of David Kimke's grammar there on the bottom. But this is a picture on the top. Here's that full page again, but I've zoomed in for you here. This is a picture of the rabbits attacking the palace defended by the dog. And notice you have one of the rabbits with the crown, or two of the rabbits actually with the crown. Why are rabbits attacking the dog who's defending the palace? This is all part of Christian artwork in the Middle Ages, where rabbits attack dogs for fun, right? Because normally dogs chase rabbits. But look at the way these artists in the Christian world, in their Latin manuscripts, portray the animals here. And so our Jewish artist has done the same thing. On this page, we're now near the end of the grammatical treatise. Let's look at the artwork on top. What do we have now? We now have cats attacking the palace defended by mice. And again, one of the cats is wearing the crown. Okay, cats are attacking the palace defended by mice. Where do we get this from? Again, Christian art, right? There's the cat on the right with the bow and arrow, and the little mouse defending the palace on the left. In the turrets there, the series of mice with their weapons. Just good, fun stuff in Christian manuscripts, and Jewish artists can do the same kind of work. There's an expert on everything, and here I just want to direct your attention to the two recent books by Kathleen Walker-Michael of the British Library, Cats and Dogs in Medieval Manuscripts. Everything you'd ever want to know about the subject. I've just given you the totality of what I know, because as I said, I'm not an art historian, but at least I know where to go when I need further information from an expert. And here we are, again, just to show you this art one more time. What are these animals doing? By the way, look at this, folio 6V and 7R. So we're back in the beginning of the biblical, we're back in the beginning of the codex, the beginning portion of the grammatical treatise. And so here we have a monkey jester on the left and a bear jester on the right playing the pipe. And again, of course, no surprise, in these Christian manuscripts written in Latin, you have artists drawing animals playing musical instruments as well, a pipe being played by a donkey, and whatever that is, playing the tambourine or a drum. Okay, so you get to see what our biblical text, our biblical codex is doing here. Okay, who's responsible? Every manuscript every complete manuscript in the Middle Ages, Hebrew, Latin, Greek, Arabic, etc., has what we call a colophon page. The colophon gives you the following information, if it's a complete colophon: the name of the scribe, the place where he wrote it, or she, we do have female scribes, the date, and for whom it was written. Who was the benefactor? Who commissioned the manuscript? Who paid for it and therefore owned the work that you see that I've been showing you? And in this case, in the Kennecott Bible, that colophon tells us everything. So here it is on the right, and here's the English for you. We can read a little bit of it on the right, if you can follow along in the Hebrew. Ani Moshe Rabbi Yaakov ibn Zabara HaSofer. I, Moshe ben Yaakov of the Ibn Zabara family, the scribe, Katafti v'nikadati umasarti v'hegeti ela arba'im v'esrim sfarim b'kovetz echad. I wrote and I punctuated and I added the Masorah, those Masoretic notes we were talking about, and I proofread or I checked these 24 books in a single collection. And then he gives you the date, which of course is in the Hebrew calendar, and we translate that to 1476 CE. And then he says that he did the work where? Bekan, here, Bemata La Carunya, in the place La Carunya. So we have a date and we have the name of our artist, of our scribe. And he did this for, it goes on, Le Bachor HaNechmad Yitzchak ben Kavod HaYakar Don Shlomo de Braga. Sorry, this is Ben Bachor HaYakar. For the delightful young man, Yitzchak, the dear firstborn son of Shlomo de Braga. And then he goes on with this blessing that you see there in the Hebrew with the English there on the left. So now we know the name of the person who wrote it and for whom he wrote it, Shlomo de Braga, but it was a gift for his firstborn son, Yitzchak. And by the way, when he writes out the word don, he doesn't, which is the Spanish word, of course, not the Hebrew word. He writes it Daled Vav Nun, as you see here. Okay, this explains why, when you go back to Psalm 90, the Psalm of Moses is given such big prominence, great prominence, because the scribe's name was Moshe, and he asked the artist, do me big, or something like that when we get to Psalm 90. So it's not just because this is the single psalm devoted to Moses, it's because our scribe's name is Moshe. And there is the colophon again. This is where La Coruña is, the far northwest corner of Spain. In that Galician dialect, today it's A Coruña. And you can see that it's very close to Santiago de Compostela. Maybe some of you know people who've done the pilgrimage walk to that important site. If we zoom in on the map, you see where Braga is. It's today in northern Portugal. And Don Shlomo de Braga must have moved from Braga to La Coruña, where the manuscript was created. I've also put boxes around the two cities of León and Valladolid, which are somewhat like the capital cities of the Kingdom of Castile, or the merger of the Kingdom of León and the Kingdom of Castile. There was no real capital, by the way, to the Kingdom of Castile, but they had various places where the kings lived. But Valladolid is actually where Ferdinand and Isabella were married and lived, and it's actually where Christopher Columbus is buried as well. So when I talk about the distances and whether the scribe may ever, or the artist may ever have seen a king, just wanted to give you some sense of where these cities are. But look how remote La Coruña is in the Iberian Peninsula. Thank you, Google Maps, because we can go to La Coruña. I've never been there. And you can still see today the Rua Synagoga, that is to say, the street of the synagogue. I remind you, there haven't been Jews there since 1492. We are now going on 531 years of no Jews, but the street is still called Rua Synagoga. And thank you, Google Maps Street View, because you can actually go see what the street looks like. And by the way, my wife and I here in Provence have been exploring all these Jewish communities, some of them very small. The Jews were expelled from portions of this region in the 14th century, and yet you still have streets known as Rue Hebraïque, the Hebrew street, or the Street of the Jews, and so on. So the Rua Synagogue is still there. We know, of course, now that the synagogue was on the spot. No one has changed the name in 500 plus years. 3 years ago, the Bible returned to La Coruña. This was a major exhibition in that city. The Bodleian Library, this is the report in the Guardian newspaper, the Bodleian Library sent the Kennecott Bible back to Galicia, to La Coruña, to be on display for a few months. And my colleague, Elvira Martin Contreras of Madrid, visited La Coruña and sent me a photo of her there with the manuscript under the glass. She has also seen it itself in the Bodleian, as I have, but she took the opportunity of seeing it in her native Spain, where it had not been for half a millennium. That's the colophon of the scribe. Who is, oh, right. We know of two other works written by Moshe ibn Zabara. One of those in the British Library, and that's what you're looking at here. The other one, the location of Sassoon manuscript 1209 is unknown. I have no pictures of it, but at least I can show you what the other one by the same scribe looked like. He did not have an illuminator with him this time. He just wrote out the biblical text. And in fact, you can see a parashah indicator right here, but it's just simply parashah number 9, Vayeshev, at the beginning of the story of Joseph. And there's the colophon on the right, which by the way, on the left, which by the way, he did not write by himself. Somebody else wrote it. It's a different handwriting. And it's so overflowing with praise. The humility of the scribe would never allow such thing. Somebody else obviously wrote this and refers to him as Adonenu, our Lord, Moshe Zabara. So it's obviously written by somebody else. And again, the colophon that we've been talking about. Who is our artist? Here he is, Yosef Ben Chaim. This is a full page, okay? This is the second colophon with the name of the artist. This takes up an entire page. So these letters are quite large, and they are all, again, zoomorphic, or in some cases, anthropomorphic. And it says, Ani Yosef Ben Chaim, Zeh HaSefer Tziyarti Vehishlamti. I am Yosef, the son of Chaim. This book I illustrated and I completed. And look at the animals and the humans that are used to create these letters. And if we zoom in and just look at the words Zeh HaSefer Tziyarti, well, you know what I'm going to say. A naked woman, you got one of those in the back of your Bible, folks? Or a snail and a rabbit and a human with a seal coming up to him. And another mostly naked man over here with his buttocks showing. I haven't seen that in the back of my Eitz Chaim volume, but this is what you do when you create a manuscript, an absolute masterpiece by our illuminator, Yosef Ben Chaim. And here's the complete page again. On the previous page, by the way, he wrote out, you can see it on the right, the words, just to give him some spacing, and those words are still there. Okay, so he wrote it out first before we started doing all the artwork on the page beforehand, and he probably had that page and then created the one on your left before it all got bound together. By the way, if you go back to the parashah of Vayeshev, you actually already have a naked woman there, indicating that this is the pei and the resh of the beginning of this parashah. You can see very similar pei resh on the upper left from the colophon and the pei resh in the bottom right there from the beginning of that parashah. Okay, how did the Kennecott Bible come to be? You don't build the Empire State Building without some prior skyscrapers, right? The Chrysler Building was built a few years before the Empire State Building. Of course, you go back far enough, you have the Woolworth Building, and before that you have other tall buildings as well. There must have been precursors to the Kennecott Bible, and in this case, we know it. The precursor is the Cervera Bible, now in Lisbon, written in precisely the year 1300. Look, and here's Cervera, not far from Barcelona, the other side of Spain. Look at the two. There's no doubt that the scribe and illuminator of the Kennecott Bible used the Cervera Bible, written 176 years earlier, as a guide. This is Genesis 1 in the two Bibles. The parasha indicators in the Cervera Bible remind us of the parasha indicators in the Kennecott Bible. And here is the end of Jeremiah and the start of Ezekiel. I'm now in the Cervera Bible. I've left the Kennecott Bible. Look at this one, Jonah being swallowed by the fish. I don't think the art is as good from my lay eyes as what we've seen in the Kennecott Bible, but at least the artist of the Cervera Bible was already creating something similar. Although this art is superb. This is the menorah. There's nothing in the Kennecott Bible like this, with this quality. This is the menorah that appears in the Cervera Bible in the book of Zechariah. Now, we have a colophon here, so we learn a lot. We know the name of our scribe, Shmuel ben Avraham. We know the place where he wrote it, the second box there on the right. V'ketavtihu b'Cervera. I wrote this in Cervera. And we also have the date. Now, in this case, we have something very valuable for us. Most colophons tell us the date the scribe completed the work, which is the case in the Kennecott Bible. In this case, to our good fortune, the scribe told us when he began and when he ended. And those are the dates there on the bottom left. You all know where I'm going with this. This is exceedingly important because it allows us to determine how long it took to write a manuscript like this, the complete Bible with artwork. And by the way, he tells us that he did this work. I love this. You get a window into the world of a particular human who lived more than 700 years ago. He says he did all of this work lehitrape mishvirat shoki, while I was recovering from my broken leg. Must have been quite painful to be sitting and he had a broken leg, and to work, maybe he was standing on this manuscript. How long did it take? Well, there are 294 days from the beginning of the work to the end. You remove 53 days for Shabbat and Chagim, and you have 241 working days to write 451 folios. It's 2 folios less than the Kennecott Bible, or about 2 folios per day. And if I had asked you ahead of time, how long do you think it took to write one of these? You might have said to me, probably 2 folios per day. You might have guessed that, and this turns out to be an educated guess, which is now demonstrably true, because that's, proven from this very important colophon. If that's true of the Cervera Bible, it's also going to be true of the Kennecott Bible. So this is almost a year of work, right? It was begun in the end of July in one year and completed in May of the next year. So the question we had during the break was, why aren't there more of these? You'd have to pay the salary, or probably 2 salaries, of 2 individuals, artist and scribe, to create this over the course of, let's say, 10 months. And how many people have that kind of fund to be able to own one of these, to have one of these created for their own personal use? That's why there are so few of these. But at least we can say that this served as the basis for the Kennecott Bible. In fact, the illuminator of this Cervera Bible did something similar, but never colored it in for whatever reason. And we now learn the name of our artist of this Cervera Bible, Yosef HaTzarfati, Yosef the Frenchman. During the Q&A earlier, Bobby asked about or mentioned something about itinerant artists. Well, this may be one of them, because he's a Frenchman living in Cervera. But remember that Cervera isn't that far from the south of France, right? I showed you the map where it is today in Catalonia. So he was itinerant or moved from there to France, from France to Spain, what we would call using national denominations of these nations today. And you can see the similarity between the 2 colophons of the artists. There's no doubt that the Cervera Bible was the model for the Kennecott Bible, but now you're supposed to say to me, but wait a minute, their Severa Bible is written in the northeast corner of Spain. The Kennicott Bible is written in La Coruña in the northwest corner of Spain. How did they have anything in common with one another? Red heifer again. Here's our map. How could this Bible ever be related to that Bible given the distance? We have an answer for every question that I ask. We have ownership notes at the blank pages in the back of the Severa Bible. And these ownership notes tell us that the Severa Bible was in La Coruña. It was written in 1300, but at some point, somebody who owned it moved to La Coruña and took the Bible with him. Not the original owner, but later owners, which is why they put ownership notes in the back. And in this one, it actually says La Coruña, got rid of the la here, that he owns this, and he's now giving us a date when he was in La Coruña in 1375. A later librarian, by the way, has written in Latin there, translating the Hebrew that you see on that page. And similarly, it's still in the hands of the David Mordechai family in 1439. This is 1375. Now it's 1439, still in the hands of the same family. And so this is 37 years before the creation of the Kennicott Bible. There's no doubt that it's in La Coruña in the hands of this family, most likely still, when our two masterful individuals created the Kennicott Bible. Why is it called the Kennicott Bible? Benjamin Kennicott was the great Hebraist of 18th century Oxford, and he was the librarian of the newly built Radcliffe Camera at the University of Oxford. He purchased this Bible in 1771. So it's been in Oxford since then. How did it get there? Can we trace it back? This, by the way, is the aerial view of Oxford. This iconic building is called the Radcliffe Camera. This is the Bodleian Library here, built approximately 1500, very late in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, by Thomas Bodley, the first librarian. And it served the academic community in Oxford for almost 3 centuries, but eventually they needed another building and they built the Radcliffe Camera right here, which, by the way, today houses the History Department library. And these are the various colleges of Oxford. This, by the way, is the Sheldonian Theatre built by Christopher Wren, the same person who was brought to London after the Great Fire and built St. Paul's. He built the theater in Oxford as well. And again, promotion for the tour. Anybody who wants to see all of this, we will do a walking tour of Oxford. We'll go into a variety of these buildings and colleges. Now, back to our manuscript. We know the following. Patrick Chalmers was a Scottish merchant in Gibraltar. Remember, Gibraltar is now a crown colony of England by the late 18th century. He found the Bible there and bought it, I should say, back to Britain. And he entrusted it to William Maule, the first Earl of Panmure, a Scottish earl. So we can reconstruct the following. The Jews left Spain in 1492. Almost undoubtedly, somebody took the Bible to North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, someplace where the Spanish Jews went after the expulsion. We know there was a large group that went there. And when the British took over Gibraltar, we know that some Jews returned to Iberia, or at least to what is Gibraltar, still a British Crown colony today. And one of these Jews probably brought the Kennicott Bible back to the newly established Jewish community in Gibraltar, and there was able to sell it to Patrick Chalmers, the Scottish merchant. Why would anybody sell such a thing? Well, because by this point, we have 300 years of printing. It's so much easier just to have a printed Bible. But fortunately, all of our medieval manuscripts were not tossed, but were constantly being bought up by collectors and deposited in libraries around Europe and eventually other parts of the world, the US, Israel as well. which is why we have tens of thousands of manuscripts sitting in all of these libraries. Here is the Right Honorable Lord Panmure. And Benjamin Kennicott bought it from him in 1771 for the newly built Radcliffe camera, of which he would be the librarian. And there's the sale price, £52 and 10 shillings. It's about 9,000 pounds in today's money. It goes without saying that if we, by the way, just in our little Zoom room, put up a collection plate, I assume we could raise 9,000 pounds in our group. But today, of course, this thing, if I said to you it's worth 10 million pounds or 20 million pounds or 50 million pounds, it has no price because obviously it cannot be it cannot be valued. Who knows how much insurance was on the Kennicott Bible when it traveled to Spain a few years ago. And by the way, it was also on display in the Jewish Museum about 10 or 11 years ago. And that's why it's called the Kennicott Bible, officially Kennicott Manuscript number 1. And here I am with my colleague, Cesar Merchan Haman, the Hebraica librarian in Oxford, now 4.5 years ago, looking at the Bible itself. And Cesar will be our personal guide when we visit the Bodleian Library on our tour and show us not only this Bible, but of course, all the treasures we've been talking about, handwritten material by Maimonides and so on. Here it is again in its box. You could buy the facsimile, however. There is a facsimile edition, and it's only 8,000 pounds. So this is a remarkable achievement by this great company in London called Facsimile Editions. And everybody like what I'm saying here, the original was bought for what is today 9,000 pounds. You could buy the facsimile today for just a little bit under that at 8,000 pounds. You can also buy a single leaf, by the way. I forget by how much if you just wanted a single leaf. But this is an amazing company. They do these facsimiles, including the Kennicott Bible. What a wonderful journey. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and put some links into the chat for you, and I can send them later to Rabbi Bolton as well. But the only way to end our series, I guess I should say gracias, since we're talking about Spain, but the only way to end our series is truly to say toda. Thank you for joining us during our 3 presentations, and of course, happy to take questions and answers.
Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Rendsburg. Just fantastic. I want to ask that, if you have a question that you kind of raise your hand here and I'll call on folks. I see Benjamin and Mark Ashley so far. So Benjamin, start us off and then Mark.
I wonder whether you can refer us to a facsimile that might be affordable for lay people of such a thing that ordinary people might that you might know that people actually buy, and they're not, I don't know, Barnes and Noble, but somewhere that would have that would focus on the artwork and that might have enlargements and that sort of thing.
Unfortunately, there are no inexpensive facsimile editions. I don't know why they cost so much. I really do not know why, other than I can tell you because I've seen the facsimile. I mean, they're using high quality parchment in the facsimile, not just paper. These things are very expensive to produce, and this company, Facsimile Editions in London, does the best work. The facsimile edition of the Aleppo Codex cost about $1,000. There's no artwork, it's just text. The facsimile edition of the Leningrad Codex, which I do own, costs $250, affordable. And I leave it in my office, and it's extremely heavy. I have the students come in and look at it. I can't schlep it across campus. So they're just expensive. Nothing we can do about that, but I can direct you to the website. Now I've just sent you 2 links in the chat.
Okay.
The first one is the website where all Hebrew manuscripts of the Bodleian Library and the Vatican Library, they share a single website. The reason for that is that the same benefactor, Polanski of London, paid for the digitalization of both the Bodleian Hebrew manuscripts and the Vatican Hebrew manuscripts. So they share a website, and you can go to that link and look at all the manuscripts that are available, and the link specifically to the Kennecott Bible as well. So that's the best you can do. And
That's great.
you know, you can print them on your color printer and bind them together for half the price.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where's that link, Dr. Rendsburg?
In the chat, is it there?
Yes,
All right, you'll scroll in the chat and you'll see.
Okay, and I see the new messages are coming in. Thank you, everybody, for your very, very kind words.
Very good. And Mark Ashley.
Professor, I thought I saw in your slide reflecting the owner's notes, the use of Rashi script. Can you talk about the migration of Rashi script between the Ashkenazic and Sephardic worlds and how it was used in those sorts of manuscripts?
So those of us who are in the field call it the so-called Rashi script. Rashi wrote in an Ashkenazi script. Yeah. And I don't know that we have any handwritten stuff of Rashi, but we certainly have early manuscripts of Rashi from Ashkenaz, as you would expect. He's living in northeastern France, close to the Rhineland, where he studied in the yeshivot of Mainz and Worms. He's writing in an Ashkenazi script, which looks very much like good old German block Gothic writing, if you could picture that. This Jews of Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Jews, wrote in what you saw, which we call the Sephardic script. It has nothing to do with Rashi whatsoever. It's much more cursive, and it becomes the defining script of Iberian Jewry. Obviously, the scribe of our Bibles that I showed you are using square letters. They're not writing anything cursive, but you did see that. This is what happened. When printing started, exactly at the time of the Kennecott Bible, late 15th century, early 16th century, when we get our first printed Bibles, which include the biblical commentators, the printers decided to use square Hebrew script for the biblical text and to create a separate font to distinguish it. And they borrowed the Sephardic script to create that font for the commentators, whether they were printing Bible or Talmud. And therefore, we call it the so-called Rashi script because it has nothing to do whatsoever with Rashi, other than the fact that the printers, hundreds of years after Rashi lived, decided to use an alternative font, not just smaller, but an alternative font for the commentary text as opposed to the main text. Did you understand all that, Mark?
Yes, I think so. So it's called Rashi script because it was used to print the commentators.
By the printers, not by Rashi or anybody in his circle.
Understood. Okay, great. Thank you.
Let me ask you, Dr. Rendsburg, before someone else, if you have a question, you can raise your hand so I see you. I have, thank God there's enough people that you're not all on one screen by me. So just raise your hand using the little Zoom tools and I'll get you. But at one point, Moshe Ibn Zbara, you had a slide with his information, and there was also a manuscript with the Pentateuch, the Haftarot, and the Megillot. With that more mirrors our Chumash, the Eitz Chaim to which you make a reference, the Art Scroll, the Hertz, the like. How common was it for a synagogue community to come together and to create a Parshiot, Haftarot, and Megillot Chumash for what I imagine is the communal use in synagogue life, or at least someone's home-based minyan. And what's the history of those books within the people of the book reality?
Right. So the other manuscript by Ibn Sabar that I showed it was either that one or the one that we cannot locate, but we know about it because it was cataloged about 100 years ago. is in fact simply the Torah, the Haftarot, and the Megillot, clearly for liturgical use, right? Because that's what Jews read in the synagogue. None of us opens up and reads, the book of Ezra or, this particular prophet, which is not part of the Haftarot. But we do need, on a regular basis, for liturgical purposes, Torah, Haftarot, and Megillot. And those are quite common. I think that's what you're asking. Those are quite common, right? To have all of those in a single bound volume, which would be kept most likely in the synagogue or by the wealthy member of the community or by the chazan or somebody, and would be, used in the synagogue. So they're relatively common. I don't have, raw figures for you. I don't know if those are more common than actual complete Bibles. I suspect they are, but I'm not 100% sure.
I wonder how many of them. I wonder how many of them, or if any of them, had artwork like the ones we've been seeing now. And if they did not realizing this is not your area of inquiry just now, and I don't want to put you on the spot about those, but I would find that fascinating if, back to Hal's question and one I proposed to you after the first lecture, Jews started to integrate a little bit more art into their textuality.
Yeah.
And whether or not that made its way into the synagogue versus private homes. Folks, I want to use this opportunity to plug. You are coming in person Tuesday night to meet Dr. Yossi Chayes. He is a scholar from the University of Haifa in whose research and scholarship Or Zarua invested when he was years ago bringing to light the fact that certain texts would turn into scrolls for patrons and Jewish walls in late Middle Ages and early Renaissance Italy. And they are chock full of astrolabes and cosmological inquiry. They are chock full of Kabbalistic lore and imagery and art that illuminates and illustrates rabbinic texts that were integrated into these scrolls that are sometimes, yes, he's going to show you diagrams from books, from different manuscripts that look like these codices that we're studying with Dr. Rendsburg, but he's also going to show you the scrolls that are sometimes 6 and 7 feet long that integrate art, text, and all kinds of imagery from this age. And it's only in person, and it's Tuesday night at 7 p.m. And I'm really hoping that we can come and welcome Dr. Chayes as we've welcomed Dr. Rendsburg through the Zoom lines these last weeks. But Dr. Rendsburg, back to the art question. Did the synagogue Chumashim that you know about really have that?
No. By the way, I know the name of, I know Chayes's name and some of his work, so it's wonderful that you're able to host them this coming week at Or Zarua. So yes, absolutely. I'm sure he'll present in some fascinating materials, somewhat related to what we've been doing today and last week in particular. The ones that are going through my mind, there is, do not have artwork. I think the most beautiful of them all is owned now by the Museum of the Bible in Washington, which has a wonderful collection of Hebrew material, including we call it Valmodona #1. It was written in England in the late 12th century. And it is an absolutely beautiful manuscript. But, the handwriting is perfect, meticulous, but no artwork. There's a doodle at the end. There's a doodle at the end by the colophon and the ownership note. But that has no artwork. The other Ibn Zabara one that I showed has no artwork.
That's no license to doodle in your chumash when you're sitting in Or Zarua. But if you do doodle around your own personal Bibles, chumashim, what have you, I would love to see your artwork. So that's kind of a notion.
The only thing I would add to it is that occasionally you have what we call a carpet page at the beginning and at the end. A carpet page is one of those full pages of just artwork. And we actually have that already with the Leningrad Codex, written in Cairo in the year 1009. But it's just a single or 1 or 2 pages of carpet pages. Maybe there's more than 1 or 2. And it's just geometrics. They're not like your rug at home. That's why we call them carpet pages. They're geometrics. They're not pictures of animals and people and birds and so on. So because it was produced in the Muslim world, and of course Muslim art is also just geometrics. So yeah, they're not. These would be quite remarkable. I mean, I could make a quip, and any scribe could write out the entire Torah in a month or two, without a problem. It's all that extra work that's required to do all the artwork. We keep going back to that question of why there's so few of these. But I hope I've shown you and convinced you that the Kennecott Bible is A, the greatest Bible ever written, and B, the crown jewel of all medieval Hebrew manuscripts. To my mind, nothing surpasses it, including some of the most beautiful Haggadot, which I have held in my hands. I keep going back. This is my favorite. Every time I'm in Oxford, and again, I put the links in the chat just for you now for the England tour coming up this summer. Please join us if you'd like to see more of these treasures in Oxford, Cambridge, and London. I will every other year visit the Bodleian Library and ask Cesar, can I hold the Kennecott one more time and just turn its pages? And he always accommodates and says yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Whoever's going to travel with you this summer is in for a great treat. We could keep you here talking, but maybe another time about whether or not these Masoretic and Masoretic notes were the same among all these different Bibles, grammar treatises at the time, giving us some indication of deeper understandings, if different manuscripts exist about the tropes and their potential meaning. And as a set of commentary interests me, we were just talking about this minion this morning about whether or not Az Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael, which all come before the Et Nachta, would be different if the Et Nachta was on Moses's name. These are kinds of things that people were interested in terms of medieval commentary, wondering about some of that. You've created questions. In other words, lines of inquiry, Kabbalistic diagrams like Bobby mentioned, and Celtic like Zella did, and whether or not we're going to integrate more artfulness into our Jewish life, which is I think a goal of Or Zarua, to realize that there's an intersection between the world of art and between the world of Jewish text. And I knew that this would be a fantastic way to blend those worlds and to inspire us to continue to think about what we would draw on the pages of our own manuscripts if we were writing our own Torahs and our own sacred texts, or hiring the folks as patrons. So your work splashes into the world of congregational life, Dr. Rendsburg, over these last 3 lectures. And the intersection between your erudition and scholarship and our community is so important to us as a value. And you have made it so just lovely and understandable, and you translate it in a way that really brings us closer to Torah and our culture as a Jewish people. And I really want to thank you for spending time with us over these weeks.
And thank all of you. It's been so wonderful to engage with you, and I truly enjoyed all of your questions and contributions, and the search, the search for the thirst and quest for knowledge just continues onward. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. This was marvelous. Just
Really,
a wonderful
so
morning.
wonderful.
Thank you
really.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Triple treat.
Shavua Tov, everyone. See you Tuesday night, if not before. Please come to Dr. Hayes and our presentation of the Ilanot literature, the Kabbalistic tree.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Shavua Tov. Hello, Dr. Rendsburg. Gary, take good care. Bye, Melissa.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.